Thought about what it would take to build a country from scratch? Well, it turns out it all boils down to a few giant economic choices. Over the next few minutes, we're going to look at the fundamental blueprints that have shaped nations around the world, from total isolation to global free-for-alls, and from complete government control to wide open markets. Okay, let's get right into it.
So picture this, you've got your new nation. Awesome. But now the real work starts. Before you do anything else, you have to answer one huge, fundamental question. How is your country going to deal with the rest of the world? This one decision, it sets the stage for pretty much everything that comes next.
And that brings us to our very first fork in the road. Does your brand new nation open its doors and dive into international trade, with exports and imports? Or do you build up walls and decide to go it alone? Let's talk about that closed walls option first. Economists call this a closed economy. The idea here is absolute self-sufficiency. No imports, no exports. If your people want something, you have to make it yourselves. From cars to computers to medicine, it's all on you. You are, for all intents and purposes, an economic island. So here's the fundamental trade-off. On one hand, being a closed economy is kind of like living in a fortress. A massive global financial crisis happens? You might barely notice. You're insulated. But the downside is massive. Your growth is literally capped by your own borders. Your ability to innovate and expand depends only on the resources and people you have right there. Think about modern-day North Korea, or even India before it opened up its economy back in the 90s. Now, let's look at the complete opposite path, the open economy. With this model, you don't just open the doors, you pretty much tear down the walls. You sell what you're good at making to the rest of the world. Those are your exports. And you buy what other countries make better or cheaper. And those are your imports. You are fully plugged into the huge, messy, complex global marketplace. An open economy, like what you see in the USA, can tap into a global market of billions of people, which means its growth potential can seem almost infinite. But, and this is a big but, that connection is a total double-edged sword. A supply chain issue in Asia or a recession over in Europe can send shockwaves right through your economy. You're tied to the world's fortunes, for better or for worse. So here's what it all boils down to. It's a choice between safety and opportunity. A closed economy gives you stability and self-reliance, but it puts a ceiling on your potential. An open economy, on the other hand, offers almost unlimited growth, but it also exposes you to all the chaos of the world. This is the first massive decision any nation has to make. All right, so you've made your choice about how you'll deal with the rest of the world, but that just leads to the next massive question. What about what's happening inside your borders? More specifically, who owns and controls all the stuff in your country? The land, the factories, the businesses. Who's actually in charge here? This image really lays out that next great divide. See, on one path, the whole engine of the economy is private profit. But on the other, it's about the government's vision for the good of everyone. And let me tell you, this isn't just some dry economic choice. This is the core ideological battle that has basically defined the last 200 years. First up, let's head down the path of minimal government control. This is what we call a capitalist or free market economy. The core idea is super simple. The means of production, we're talking factories, farms, even ideas, they're all in private hands. And the main reason anyone does anything? To make a profit. The intellectual giant behind this whole idea is Adam Smith. You've probably heard of him. His concepts of the invisible hand and free markets really laid the foundation for capitalism. Because he argued that when individuals chase their own ambitions, it somehow, almost magically, ends up benefiting everybody. Now, capitalism has some pretty powerful arguments going for it. It sparks a ton of innovation because, hey, a great new idea can make you rich. Hard work is often directly rewarded. And for consumers, you get a dizzying amount of choices. But it's got a tough side too. That hire and fire policy can mean a lot of job insecurity, and it can create a really massive gap between the rich and the poor.
Okay, now let's do a complete 180 and look at the polar opposite, the socialist or command economy. In this system, the government isn't just a referee on the sidelines, it's the main player on the field. It owns and controls all the key resources, and the driving goal isn't profit for a few people, but the well-being of everyone in society.
And the key thinker here is Karl Marx. In his legendary book, Das Kapital, he took a hard look at capitalism, critiqued it, and argued that the state should control everything to prevent workers from being exploited and to create a much more equal society. So, what does this actually look like in the real world? Well, the public sector is king.
The gap between rich and poor is usually a lot smaller. But you guessed it, there are downsides. With less competition and no profit motive, you often get less innovation. Since everyone's basically working for the state, individual hard work doesn't always translate to more pay, and consumers have way fewer choices. The classic example of this, of course, is the former USSR.
For a long, long time, it really seemed like these two systems, pure capitalism and pure socialism, were the only options on the menu. It was an either-or kind of deal. But then, a global crisis came along that just shook the very foundations of how people thought about economics.
That moment was 1929, the Great Depression. It started in the United States, the heartland of capitalism, and then it just spread like wildfire across the globe. It was this absolutely devastating crash that made a lot of people think, maybe, just maybe, this pure free market thing has some serious problems. This crisis created an opening for some brand new thinking. An economist named John Maynard Keynes stepped up with a really revolutionary proposal. He basically asked, what if we don't have to choose one or the other? What if we could take the best parts of both systems and combine them? And that line of thinking gave birth to the third major economic model, which is the one that in some way, shape, or form most countries follow today, the mixed economy. It was all about finding a new path forward by blending the strengths of the other two.
You know, the logic of a mixed economy is actually pretty smart. You let the private sector do what it does best, innovate, create, and generate profit and growth. But at the same time, you have a strong public sector run by the government that focuses on social welfare, things like public schools, healthcare, and roads. They exist side by side.
A fantastic example of a nation that very deliberately chose this path is India. After gaining independence, its leaders looked around the world at the different options. They were nervous about the inequalities of pure capitalism, but they also saw the big limitations of pure socialism. So their solution, which they made official in 1955, was a mixed economy, one that tried to have the engine of private business while still using the state to look out for all its citizens.
So there you have it, the three major blueprints for building an economy. You've got capitalism, all about private profit, championed by Adam Smith. You have socialism, focused on public welfare, as envisioned by Karl Marx. And then you have the mixed economy, that pragmatic blend of the two with J.M. Keynes as its architect. Each one is a totally different answer to those big questions of ownership and growth. And that brings us to today. These three models have shaped our entire modern world. But with huge challenges on the horizon, like climate change, automation, and global inequality, the big question is still out there. Are these blueprints enough for the next 100 years? Or is there a fourth, totally new economic system waiting just over the horizon?